Hello, all you reinventors. This is Lesley Jane Seymour, and I'm the founder of this podcast and of CoveyClub.com. And I'm really excited to have for you today somebody who is part of a movement that I found myself part of, not because of choice, because of you all know that, those of you who know me, I have what's called cluster headache. And cluster headache is something that is triggered by alcohol often for people who have it. It is not a headache you want to have. It sticks around for months until you chase it away. So I have not been a drinker for many, many years for that reason. Not to say that I don't love my glass of wine. I miss it terribly. Um, but there are an awful lot of people, especially in midlife, who've decided for weight reasons, for health reasons, they need to cut back or cancel their kind of drinking they did. And Hilary has written several books and done it herself about the dry challenge in January. So we thought this would be great to bring to you, those of you who want to create change. You know that Covey Club is all about change, all about reinvention. Yes, you can reinvent the way you party. Yes, you can reinvent the way you connect with other people. You don't need alcohol to do that. I can tell you, as somebody myself who has not been drinking or doing anything for years and years and years, I'm still a connector. I still have great friends. I still have a lot of fun. I still party. It's just something you can live without if you want to. So anyway, that's why I asked Hilary to talk to us today, and I hope that this will be insightful for you. You'll hear about how she got into it and what happened and how it changed her health and how it changed the way she slept and how it changed the sort of her whole trajectory. Something small like this, which is what I've always said to you, small changes can create big change. And that's kind of what we're looking for at Covey Club. And obviously, we are the reinvention specialists. So if you are interested in making big change in your life, mosey on over to CoveyClub.com, download all our guides, we have, oh my God, we have anything you could imagine that you need help with content wise, with midlife, creating change, creating reinvention. January is it. It's a good time. You don't have to only reinvent in January, but it's a good time. It's all free to you. And then if you want a good supportive group with you, you can actually join the Covey Club. It's very experienced women who want to help each other make change in their lives, and they do. So here is Hilary Sheinbaum, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. So, welcome, Hilary. So glad to hear that you're on the podcast. I remember reading about you and I thought, what a great idea. And especially, since a lot of women at midlife tend to be drinking too much, and that really started during COVID and really has not let up. So, I think there are not a lot of people who would like to know how to control it better. And I think that, any kind of interesting, innovative way to do it is always very helpful. So tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? What's your background? What do you do? And then we'll talk about what you actually do with your dry January MVP, right?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Um, I guess my story starts kind of in New York, kind of in South Florida. I was born in New York, grew up in South Florida, went to college at Florida State University, and then transferred to the University of Florida. So two and two. And then I came back to New York, and really my passion was journalism. And my goal was to be the editor in chief of People magazine.
Ah,
Um,
you're
but
kidding. Okay.
no, dead serious. And
Oh, magazines were so much fun when we
I
had them.
know,
Oh my God, you would have loved it. It's really fun.
I
It's
know.
we should have
And
known it was too much fun, right?
it
So,
was so much fun. But truly, I didn't quite make it there, but I did have the fortune of acting as a red carpet reporter and an entertainment journalist for about 5 years, working for,
oh, fabulous.
yeah, with
Okay.
Style and In Touch and
Oh,
Us Weekly. So
so you got a lot of it. You got
I
a lot of,
I did. I got half a decade worth of, interviewing
oh,
celebrities on the red carpet and, one-on-one and going to movie premieres and after parties and really living a very fun life in New York. And then it's part of my story, so I'll definitely get to the transition part of my job. But essentially, after my red carpet stint, I started, kind of branching out of entertainment. And while I was a red carpet reporter, I was writing a lot about food and beverage too. Um, and a lot of that was about booze, which became kind of, I wouldn't say like obsolete because I still drink, but I don't report on it anymore. So, and that happened around the time that I first, discovered dry January and what that was. So, um, that was about almost 9 years ago was my first dry January. And that really changed the trajectory of not just my journalism career, but really my day-to-day life and really like how I function as a human. And
Uh-huh.
even beyond that, starting a platform called goingdry.co, which it curates non-alcoholic menus for bars, restaurants, and hotels,
Mm-hmm.
including the Four Seasons Jackson Hole and Four Seasons Santa Fe, and some others. And I throw non-alcoholic events everywhere from New York to LA to Charleston and Nashville, Atlanta, and beyond. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit of my background, a little bit of journalism, a little bit of, I obviously wrote a book, wrote 3 books, and have
Three
had
books. Okay. The Dry
yeah,
Challenge, right?
the
And
Drive Challenge, a journal for bad days, which came out late last year, and most recently Going Dry, which is a workbook.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, did you feel like alcohol was fueling your job? Was it part of the job? I remember um my very first job was Women's Wear Daily, and people would take me out to lunch. I was a kid, literally a kid. Some producer took me, clothing producer took me out to some fancy lunch and said, "Here, have some champagne at lunch." I came back completely, I couldn't function basically. I don't drink in the middle of the day. And my boss sent me home. So I
Rightfully
was
so. That, I mean,
useful, useless, useless. But
as your
that's,
boss
yeah.
definitely should have. Um,
Like,
I will
did you find that was just, were people just, that was how they were bonding, was over alcohol, or was it just part of the thing, or you didn't think about it, or how did that all happen?
all of it. I think certainly in celebrity culture, a lot of these parties and certainly after parties are sponsored by
Oh, they're sponsored.
oh
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't even think about that. Okay.
Mhm. And so, and even like one-on-one interviews, like I remember this is obviously before Chrissy Teigen was sober, but she had done, a partnership with an alcohol brand, and they had offered her as, an interview at the event. So there are a lot of ways that I think my entertainment career and alcohol were overlapping. But additionally, I was writing about food and beverage. So I was constantly getting invited to, wine lunches or beverage tastings for beer, wine, spirits, cocktails, and interviewing, brand ambassadors and bartenders. And, even if it wasn't about the booze that I was writing, certainly, and as you know, a lot of these, networking activities and functions are surrounding, cocktails. And that's how people bond. And that's how people, meet each other and they feel comfortable because they loosen up and they start talking. So, among, many other things in the workplace, and really just as a New Yorker in general, where you don't have to drive or think about, getting behind the wheel,
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
there are ample opportunities to drink. I mean, everything is an opportunity, right? Like going on a date, like going to see your girlfriends, even people in Central Park, they I don't think they're supposed to, but you're popping open bottles of wine because it's a lovely day. So I think that in our culture there are all these opportunities to drink, and they're really, it doesn't need to have that alcohol component, but a lot of people, find themselves imbibing.
So how did you hook up with I mean, what was the impetus? Did you have an experience that said, okay, this has gone too far, I'm out of control, so therefore I'm interested in dry, I mean, dry January is out there. Like, why did you hook up with it?
Yeah, it was an accident, to be honest. I didn't have, this like moment of clarity where I was like, wow, I need to quit booze. Instead, I had been doing these red carpets and writing about, alcohol. And at the end of 2016, I had dinner. Yeah. I was like, what meal was I having? I had dinner with a friend and we were eating sushi and, he mentioned this thing called dry January. And I kind of just scoffed internally at the idea because it just didn't vibe with my career or my lifestyle at the time. And a week later, it was New Year's Eve, and I actually texted him, Happy New Year. And I was at this party and I was drinking, and I decided to propose a bet. And this was my friend who, it sounds very stereotypical of like a guy in finance, but would come with me to all these parties, like to go out, definitely like to have a good time. And so I said, I want to, let's make a bet. Let's see if you can do a dry January. And thankfully he agreed. And unknowingly, this, text message that was one line in like a history of 10 years of our, friendship and texting became the impetus so that really changed my life, as cliche as it sounds. But so at midnight, I put down my drink. Our dry January began, and it just changed my perspective on everything, and not just from um, the experience of like feeling better, like sleeping better. My skin was clearer. My finances were in a much better place
Yeah,
because
it's expensive. Alcohol, really expensive.
alcohol is expensive, but Ubers are expensive. Hangover cures are expensive.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, those cheese fries at 1 a.m. that can add up.
Expensive for your thighs.
That too. And like just after a month of not drinking, there were so many benefits. And at the end of the month, I won. So I won a dinner because that was the premise that he paid for, and he lost because he was peer pressured by a woman that he met at a bar. So, um, yeah, it really changed also just my observance of alcohol and just recognizing how it has really like gotten into every crevice of our society.
Mm.
So now, this is almost 9 years later, but
Wow.
especially that first month, I was so aware of every alcohol ad or every, sign on the street with a logo, or every time somebody asked me like, do you want to have a drink, or why aren't you drinking? It was just so much, I was so much more aware of my choices. Um,
Did
and
you
so
find it hard to do that month? Were you finding that you were uncomfortable?
there were definitely some uncomfortable moments. And I think that more than anything, I really have to give credit where it's due. And I think that having a bet really, I'm an Aries, and I don't know if you believe in, the
Oh,
zodiac.
I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
am very like stubborn. And so I was not going to lose this bet. And especially as a freelance writer, I could not afford to lose this bet because I was not to buy anywhere in New York City. Absolutely not. He ended up spending $800 on our dinner. So there
What
was
kind of dinner was that
it
without
was
alcohol?
yeah, well, it was a tasting menu at Momofuku Co, and that was part of our bet. Was like
Okay.
he knew that like the stakes were high, and I was aware of that too. So I really think that was motivation for me, because when I said to people, I'm not drinking, and they would ask, are you sick? Are you pregnant? There were so many like very charged questions that came with it. But even on dates, the moment that I said I have a bet with my guy friend, I cannot lose, people were more eager to rally behind me and say, like, tell me more about this bet. Like, what, like, what's on the table? Like, what are the stakes? Like, how can we support you? Because nobody nobody wants to lose. Um,
That's
and
so funny. All
yeah,
it took was that. That's so interesting for you to change your whole perspective. And you hadn't even gone into the health benefits or anything, had you?
1000%. I think, listen, there were definitely challenges where like there were moments of like feeling like, oh, I just really wish I could order a drink. And I still went out to the bars. Like I would go and get,
Yeah,
Diet Coke, ask the bartender to mix something without
right.
alcohol. But having my friend there, just not just the bet part of it, but also being able to vent to somebody who understood what I was going to, and like recap the highs and lows and even just talk about our experience with somebody who understood it, I think was just so valuable. So that's always one of my biggest tips, is to recruit a friend. Whether you make a bet or not is totally up to you. Whatever motivates you, excellent. But like, hands down, I think having somebody who is supporting your endeavor is so valuable, because there are going to be a lot of people who are not comfortable with what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They say that with everything. I mean, that is why when it comes to voting, you get people on the phone and say, are you going to vote? And where are you going to vote? All those things are about becoming public with what you're going to do. And that alters the outcome all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you, I mean, like for people who are thinking about this, because we'll put this together, we'll have it run in, in January. I think it's a good time to do it. Um, what were the things that you learned? What were you surprised by? How do you feel differently? I have been, just so you know, I haven't been a drinker for 5 years just because I have headaches that are triggered by, I have cluster headache, which when I'm in season is triggered by alcohol. And people have a hard time understanding that. And I would say the first 3 years were really first year was really tough. I live in New Orleans and like everybody's drinking all the time. And there are a lot of alcoholics here. You see them, I mean, scary people on the street, running, swaying because that's all they've got. Um, but I'm like perfectly happy with it. And it doesn't, would I love to have a glass of wine once in a while? Yes, but the pain of a headache is not worth it. So I just haven't done it in so long now. It's probably about more longer than that. But, it is something that you learn.
Absolutely. And now, and I will definitely answer your question, but I also want to say that like, now there are non-alcoholic options available. So if
Yeah,
you're a winer and you like, sparkling wines, there's Mia
right.
Netto, there's Freshenet alcohol removed, both in, white and in rosé. And, there's free spirits. You can mix your own, bourbon, tequila, gin cocktails. The possibilities now are so much more expansive than they were when, at least when I, came into, this very, at the time, teeny tiny community, because now it's
Right.
much. Um, but now I just forgot your question.
No,
The benefits.
yeah,
I
the
think,
benefits. What health
yeah,
benefits have you seen in yourself? I mean, obviously, if anybody does any research, for a long time they were on the fence about whether it was one drink a day was good for you or two or whatever. And now it seems, and this is the problem with health research, is that it bounces around. It now seems like they've come down very clearly on the side of no alcohol at all is good for you.
absolutely. And I have to point out, because I think we forget sometimes, that most of the research that we are presented with is studies that are done on men, and men
Oh, yes. Oh my God. That's the other part of the problem.
is
Yes.
so different. Like, it affects our hormones and our brains and our bodies incredibly different.
Differently. Yes.
That just like is one thing I just absolutely need to make clear. So, on top of all of that, I think, most immediately my sleep changed for the better. I was sleeping, 4 to 5 hours a night, and I thought it was because I was very anxious. And again, I was never drinking every day or even having more than like a couple drinks at a time. I wasn't like getting hammered on the weekends, that sort of thing. But I realized obviously that I was waking up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom, and then I was, tossing and turning. And the thing is that obviously alcohol will sedate you initially, but then you'll get these like crazy awakenings in the middle of the night because,
Right.
um,
Sugar metabolism, right?
exactly. So it's just not good. So my sleep changed most immediately. I realized that in January, which is like the dullest, grayest, nastiest month in New York, my skin was glowing. I had not
Oh,
seen.
your skin changed. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that
Okay.
especially for people who are concerned with their skin laxity and, the like suppleness and the moisture within their skin, obviously alcohol dehydrates you. So the first thing
Yeah.
it is going to make it very obvious on, your face and your skin. And even for the rest of your body. I mean, just hydration is so important in general for health. So you want to avoid dehydrating yourself at all costs. So there's that. I think also, you know, alcohol is expensive. It's not something that I think a lot of people think about on a regular basis.
It's
In New York,
super expensive. I look at the cost of these drinks down here because it's a drinking town. It's $15 or $20 for a drink.
absolutely. In New
Just
York,
one.
you can pay $5 for a glass of wine. Like it
Yeah,
just, no matter where you are, especially obviously in these large metropolitan areas, prices are high, inflation is real, like there's no doubt. But I think in general, even if you're spending $10 on a drink, chances are you're not having one. And
that's
over
right.
time, that's going to add
Correct.
up. And
Correct.
again, we are, safety first. Nobody's getting behind the wheel after a drink. So that is going to cost you a taxi or an Uber or another form of transportation. Um, you know, I always say that at 2 a.m., nobody is craving a kale salad. That is going to contribute to, weight gain if weight loss is one of your goals. Also, I mean, drinks are calorie bombs.
They
If
are
you're
calorie bombs.
love the
Yes.
margarita. I was teaching a mocktail class at a gym, and somebody was asking me about the calories in non-alcoholic beverages and the sugar content because
It's
those are
expensive. Yeah, it's high calories, high sugar often.
that are
Yeah.
on labels. And
Yeah.
when I said to them, you're comparing a a shot, quote unquote, of non-alcoholic spirit to a shot of tequila, that's about a 90 to 95 calorie difference. And if you're having a traditional margarita, that is 400 calories in glass. And you're not having one. You're probably having two, maybe
At
three,
least. Yeah,
maybe
at
you can
least.
swap. So
Correct.
just depending on what your goals are, I mean, these are all things that contribute to, if you're abstaining, contributes to, a potentially healthier life.
How is the peer pressure today? Because I know for some younger people, it's all about peer pressure. I mean, a friend of mine had a son who had epilepsy, and it was triggered by alcohol. And he would end up in these horrible situations. And I would say to her, like, you just have to lay down the law and say, you just can't drink for your health reasons. And she's like, oh, he can't do that. He can't say he can't drink. Blah, blah. I was like, people understand a health issue for God. No, no, they don't. He'll be a pariah. Like, do you think it's changed in that I don't feel like anybody, you know, feels differently about me, the fact that I drink or don't drink.
I
Is
think,
that true at your age as well?
yeah, I think it's definitely gotten better. I think people are more inclusive. I think that people are more respectful of, not pressing certain issues and also not getting so extremely involved in another person's business. Like for example, when I started doing this and people would ask me if I was pregnant, and I was like, that is none of your business. Or if I was sick or if I had a problem, like that was pretty commonplace in like my 20s. And I'm not sure if that was just like a sign of the times slash like I was in my 20s, but now in my 30s, like nobody is asked, especially being in my 30s, nobody's going to ask me if I'm pregnant or not. I mean, that's a sensitive subject on its own. And certainly it's nobody's business unless I want to talk about,
Right.
sick or whatever the potential quote unquote issue may be.
Right.
But I do think that people are willing to just be more inclusive in general and more respectful of people's boundaries. I think obviously like with people being so outspoken about mental health and other issues, I think that people are just nicer, kinder people. um and I think that Gen Z honestly doesn't drink as much as generation.
Really?
Oh,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, alcohol sales have gone down. And I think that a lot of these big alcohol companies are concerned that they are losing market share because the younger generations are not imbibing. And a lot of these brands have now created non alcoholic versions of their beverage. So, for example, even like the brands that I had mentioned, like Mionetto alcohol removed and Freshenette, those are historically alcohol based brands. And they know that their consumer is evolving. And even if they're not 100% sober or whatever the case may be, like for me, for example, if I am enjoying a meal and there's a glass of wine, I don't want to have three wines like back to back. Like my tolerance is far lower than it's ever been. So you can alternate and you're still maintaining the same taste and the same quality, in a sophisticated drink without feeling like you are compromising your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that, yeah, my point being that even though people of, Gen Z, and we'll see how Gen Alpha is when the time comes, I think that they're just so much more aware. Like, we were told that one glass of wine a day is
Or
fine,
two was okay.
good for your heart, all of that stuff. And they're learning from the beginning that that's not the case. And
Right.
they also have a few other more options that are legal now that were not legal, in the past few years. But yeah, alcohol sales are down, and
I didn't know that. Very interesting.
very
So, what do you think if we're talking to women in their 50s? That's mostly my consumer. What should they be looking for? Is there a place to go um, join a dry challenge, or do you get your friends together to do it, or what's sort of the new version of it coming up for this? If we're going to talk January 19, 2025, I can't believe we're here.
I know.
What should they be looking for?
Sorry, somebody was just calling me, and I don't know why that wasn't muted.
That's all
Um,
right.
so a few things. So obviously, without being, you know, too pushing of my book, like, they can absolutely check out the Dry Challenge or goingdry.co. There are recipes within the book. There are in Going Dry, the workbook, there are 70 plus prompts if you want to sit and journal, or, just kind of write down your thoughts. There are also activities where you can track, how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. So you really see the evolution, because I think that, unless you are able to go and look back at that data, and, qualitative and quantitative, you might just say, like, oh, okay, I felt better, but, like, you're not going to necessarily remember the details. So I think those activities are honestly very helpful, and would have been extremely helpful for me during my first dry January, had I known I was going to do it and not done it on my.
Ah, so
But
tracking your experience as you do it for that first January is helpful because then you can remember what you felt and what you saw that was different. Because otherwise it gets lost, right?
and I think that,
Okay.
there are, even if it's not from my book, there are so many non-alcoholic recipes online.
Right.
If you obviously live anywhere in the US, there are tons of non alcoholic bottle shops throughout the States, even internationally, like in the UK. I mean, Dry January started in the UK, and there are non alcoholic bottle shops there. But in New York, in LA, in, um, you
Mm.
know, Chicago, in Indianapolis, like in Cleveland, there are, and all over Texas, there are non-alcoholic bottle shops that really serve as, um, a community builder for people who are not 100 necessarily 100% sober, but people who, just want to try it out as well. So I think that is a really good place to start on a local level. I think also, yeah, getting your girlfriends together and just saying, like, let's try this out together. And I also always say, like, taking the reins on making plans. You don't have to be super, like, organized and, structured, and say, everybody, we're not drinking this month. But instead, if your group of people, friends, etc., get together, a few times a month, bring those non-alcoholic beverages with you. Make those plans. Be the person who is, taking charge and saying, we're going to go on a walk, we're going to go on a hike, we're going to go bowling, instead of, sitting around with a bottle of wine. Do something active that has your hands busy,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're just
Mm-hmm.
not craving that glass in hand. I think those are all, ways that you can really change your habits.
That was one of the big things when it came to when I was growing up. And everybody was smoking. When the phone would ring, you would light a cigarette. That was the sort of jingle bell, chicken in a box,
Mhm.
that the response was those two things got linked.
Yeah.
So when you tried to stop smoking, one of the things you had to break was the habit. When
Yeah.
the phone rang, I mean, you guys can't imagine a phone ringing and you have to go get it off a wall. Um, but a phone actually ringing, and you have to decouple your automatic responses that you've learned just by accident.
Yeah,
and you have to get something else in your hand.
definitely.
No, you know,
I even say, even for like date nights or when you're bringing a hostess gift, you don't need to bring a bottle of wine. You can bring a candle, you can bring a dessert, you can
yeah,
bring
yeah, yeah,
something else, you know, you can ask the host or hostess, like, what do you need?
yeah,
Or again, you can bring a non-alcoholic version of your favorite drink. But
right.
I think, yeah, there are a lot of, automatic habits that we just assume. And sometimes it just takes one more step in changing
And
them.
it's a little more thoughtful anyway. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll give you one thing that I now bring that is that no one has is the fly spinners. You can buy them in
Oh,
quantity and they're fabulous. Anybody who likes to entertain outdoors, these things are fantastic. No one knows about them. They're like, you can buy them in quantity and they're like $12 or something cheaper than a bottle of wine. And everybody's like, what's this? I've never used it. That's so cool. And it's so helpful. You can find something cool. Do you have a hostess gift like that?
I love that. No, I usually bring, honestly, a non-alcoholic, you know, version of whatever the vibe is, like, so
Okay.
I know there's going to be wine at the party. I'll bring the non-alcoholic version because then people like
Okay.
to taste them side by side. Um,
Oh,
so that's typically what I'll do. And sometimes, I'll bring like a spirit bottle if I know that people will be like mixing drinks in the kitchen so that they can do the same. And partially that's like for my own good too. But yeah, I think that people often assume that that's what I'm going to bring anyway. So, but I do like your idea. So I think I might steal it and do both.
oh, they're fabulous, and you buy them. You can buy them in quantity on Amazon, and no one has them. And they actually can go into like a sock. The same the wine bag because
Yeah,
they're the same size, same height. Like if you have those old ones, anyway,
perfect.
people are thrilled because they've never seen them and they actually work.
And they'll use them.
They'll use them. Yeah, it's a great useful thing, and no one has it. So.
Love that.
Where can everybody find you, Hilary, and where can they find your books and all of that?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram. My handle is Hilary with one L, Hilary, Writes, NY. Also, HilarySheinbaum.com. My books are on Amazon. They're The Dry Challenge and Going Dry. And if you live in a major city, often visiting. So I think in the winter, depending on when this airs, I will be in Atlanta at the end of January. I will
Oh,
be
cool.
Florida, likely in the beginning of February. So you can check goingdry.co for all of my upcoming scheduled dates.
Oh, you should come to New Orleans. They need you.
I was just there for Tales the Cocktail. I was on a
Oh,
panel. I know. I wish
no.
we had coordinated this better, but it's so funny because I grew up in South Florida and the humidity was just so like reminiscent of my childhood.
Oh, you were there in August? You were here in
I was
August?
in late July.
July. Yeah, that's when it hits. It's called the front porch of hell. I understand.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's so real because it's so hard to explain to people
Yeah.
how in South Florida you need to carry around a sweatshirt. And people are like,
The
that's
air conditioning. Yeah.
exactly. You go from hot to cold so quickly. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But
All right. Well, fabulous. Wonderful to meet you, Hilary. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for writing the books and thank you for sharing.
thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Good. So I hope this conversation was helpful to you. I think Hilary has some great points that she makes. And I hope that she inspired you to get started on creating change in your life. Again, mosey on over to CoveyClub.com, find all the free resources we have for you. And for a very small fee, you can actually join the club and take part in the wonderful feeling of having women like us supporting you in the change that you're creating. And of course, follow the podcast and please share it with anybody you know who's trying to create change in their lives. That's something we're out there trying to do. We're trying to help women and men create change in their lives. And if you give us some stars and a review, that also helps us become visible. So take care and have a great day.